In this world, there are Chen Jiaju from Police Story, Chen Yongren and Lu Jianming from Infernal Affairs, Lu Jiehui and Li Wenbin from Cold War, and painters from Unmatched. In the dormitory of the Hong Kong Police Academy, the reborn veteran detective suddenly realized that this was actually a universe of police and bandit films. Keywords of the novel: Police and Bandit Universe with no pop-ups. Download the complete TXT collection of Police and Bandit Universe, and read the latest chapters of Police and Bandit Universe. Chapter 1. Opening with a Corpse. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Opening with a Corpse. Xiangjiang, Huanghuking Police Training School. At around 9 o'clock in the morning, the school police officers did not undergo daily training, but stayed in the dormitory to do internal cleaning. The most prominent bed, a young man will hang his freshly ironed clothes in the cabinet and meticulously arrange other items. This young man's name is Jiehui, 19 years old this year, and he is a student police officer at Xiangjiang Police School. But in reality, his body had been replaced by another soul. The owner of the soul used to be a reconnaissance platoon leader, who repeatedly led teams to besiege border drug traffickers and achieved second-class merit. After retiring from the military, he worked as an anti-drug police officer for 5 years, and then was transferred to other cities to work as a criminal police officer for more than a decade. He has worked in both criminal and economic investigations and solved many major cases. In an action, in order to protect the people and die alongside the criminals, we made a glorious sacrifice. However, when he opened his eyes again, he found himself a young student police officer named Jiehui from Xiangjiang Police School. From a senior criminal police officer to a police academy student police officer, the difference in identity gives off a feeling of being a senior boss abusing a novice village nickname. The truth is, the endless study every day, reciting police regulations, and bi-weekly tests made Jiehui think he was getting a copy of a high school senior dog. In his past life, Jiehui was assigned to become a police officer as a retired soldier. Although he also passed the exam after studying, he did not come from a police academy. In terms of memorizing police regulations, he was also a newcomer who had just started. However, Jiehui is very good at handling internal affairs, as he comes from a military background and organizing internal affairs is a basic skill. Jiehui, you organized so quickly. A voice rang from beside him, speaking to a student police officer named Yushueli who lived in the bed next to him. Everyone called him Ali. Yushueli looked at Jiehui's wardrobe and continued speaking, the things are neatly arranged. If the first brother really comes to inspect the dormitory, he will definitely show him your cabinet. Jiehui spoke up and said, it's not certain whether Yaij will come to the student police dormitory. He's the one who counts, and it's probably impossible to open the student police's cabinet. The student police officers did not go for training, but stayed in the dormitory to tidy up their internal affairs. It is precisely because today is a special day that the first brother of the Xiangjiang Police Force, also known as the Chief of Police, will come to the police academy to inspect. Therefore, after having breakfast, the instructor gave the student police an hour and a half to clean up the dormitory area and tidy up personal affairs. If the director came to inspect, it could also leave a good impression. Jiehui chatted with Ali for a while, and shortly after, the class monitor walked in and said, Brother 1 will arrive at 10 o'clock. It's almost 9:30 now. If you haven't finished packing up, hurry up and gather now. Everyone immediately stood up and left the student police dormitory. Squad. Turn to the left. Left turn. The instructor shouted out commands one after another, and the police officers followed the instructions, turning the entire team to the left with neat movements. Not far away, several police officers wearing white shirts are walking towards this direction. This white shirt means they are at least police officers. The inspectors of the 2 flowers can only follow at the end of the team. A man in a suit was surrounded, and he was the police chief. Seeing the police chief walking towards us, the instructor's shouting of instructions grew louder. Jiehui stood in the queue of student police officers, his eyes involuntarily looking towards the director. He found that the police chief was not the same person as the one in his memory. At this moment, the director and all the officers had already approached. When the instructor saw this scene, he immediately shouted, "Squad! Attention!" and asked everyone to stand at attention. He then turned around and saluted all the officers. "Hey, Jiehui, stop looking. It's impolite of you to stare at brother one like this," whispered Ali next to him. Jiehui regained his senses and asked in a low voice, "Is he the first brother? How did he grow up like this?" "Of course. Why? You didn't even know the first brother when you applied for the police force. Don't you usually watch the news?" Ali roast. "What's his name?" Jiehui continued to ask. "The first brother's name is Chen Jiaju, and he is a legend of the police force. When he was young, he solved many major cases that caused a sensation internationally, known as the super police. Ali muttered softly. Super police. Still called Chen Jiaju, is it a remake of a movie? Jiehui's heart suddenly turned into a galloping horse. At this moment, Jiehui fell into confusion. After his rebirth, he immediately opened his eyes at the police academy, which was a closed management system. Therefore, Jiehui had not yet had contact with the outside world, and he had always thought that he was reborn in the real Xiangjiang. And now the appearance of super police Chen Jiaju has made him realize that this may be a parallel universe. If this is a parallel universe, will the historical events that I am familiar with still exist? Jiehui suddenly felt that his greatest advantage as a rebirth had been reduced to nothing. The police chief did not stop, but quickly walked towards the next inspection site. Jiehui, on the other hand, was somewhat confused and completed the following training. Time passed quickly. After more than 10 laps of exercise, it was noon, and it was time to have lunch. As the instructor disbanded, the police officers walked in groups of 3 or 5 towards the direction of the cafeteria. "Jiehui, hurry up." Ali grabbed Jiehui and rushed to the front of the crowd, muttering, "There's a first brother inspecting today, and the restaurant will also add food. There must be delicious food, so we need to go early. If we go late, there might be nothing left. Eating is not active, thinking is problematic." From his attitude towards eating, it is evident that Yushueli is a well-mannered police officer. Ali pulled Jiehui and almost ran all the way to the restaurant. He walked into the front door and shouted directly, "I heard there's an extra meal today. What's there to eat?" At this moment, a shout suddenly rang out from the kitchen. "Help, help! There's a dead person." I saw a chubby old man running out of the kitchen with a frightened expression. He was the chef of the restaurant, and everyone called him Wu Bo. When Wu Bo saw Jiehui and several other police officers, he immediately rushed over as if he had seen a savior, and his mouth trembled as he spoke, "Dead. Dead people. Wu Bo, don't worry, speak slowly. What exactly happened? Where did the person die?" Jiehui immediately asked. "In the kitchen, in the freezer, there are dead people." Wu Bo was obviously frightened and couldn't speak clearly. "Go to the kitchen." Jiehui walked towards the kitchen without hesitation, and several other police officers followed suit. When they arrived at the kitchen, they saw that the freezer was open. Everyone walked up and saw a bloody person lying inside the freezer. Jiehui immediately reached out to investigate and found that the person was not breathing and was already a corpse. "I'm really dead." Jiehui frowned and then began to observe the deceased. The deceased was a middle-aged male, around 40 years old. His clothes had been stained black and red with blood, and his abdomen was particularly severe. Although it had been frozen in the freezer, 2 obvious wounds could still be seen on the abdomen. "Wow! Ali next to him also saw the body and immediately covered his mouth, making a nauseating sound. Not only Yu Shuili, but also the police officers who followed behind all looked nauseous when they saw this scene. He Jiehui immediately shouted, "If you want to spit it out, don't damage the scene." Upon hearing He Jiehui's words, Ali and the others felt relieved and immediately turned around to leave the kitchen, probably looking for a place to vomit. The remaining police officers also had a pale face and dared not take another look at the body. It's good for a normal person to be able to hold back and not vomit when they first see this scene. They usually keep their distance. He Jiehui, on the other hand, observed the body as if there were no one around. For him, the body in this situation could only be considered a child. When he was a scout, he experienced scenes of flesh and blood flying around. Later on, he became a criminal police officer and often dealt with corpses, even solving many cases of dismemberment. This person looks grim, isn't he a restaurant staff member? The body has been frozen, which will affect the determination of the time of death. To determine the time of death, we need to wait for the forensic autopsy. He Jiehui frowned, unable to confirm the exact time of death, which was not good news for the investigators. The wound is in the abdomen, there are 2 places in total. These are stab wounds caused by sharp weapons. From the length of the wound, the killer should have used a weapon similar to a knife. He Jiehui is not a forensic doctor, and he cannot destroy the scene. If he only observes from the outside of the body, he can only gather this information. I need to ask Wu Bo, who first discovered the body. Thinking of this, He Jiehui turned around and walked out of the kitchen to find the frightened Wu Bo. At this point, many police officers had already arrived at the restaurant. A large number of people could boost courage, and Wu Bo's emotions had eased a lot. At least he could speak clearly. He Jiehui poured a cup of hot water and handed it to Wu Bo, then asked, "Wu Bo, how did you find the body? Don't be nervous, speak slowly." "I was cooking in the kitchen and originally wanted to put the remaining ingredients in the freezer, but as soon as I opened the freezer, I saw Chang lying inside, already dead. Then I ran out and shouted for help, and then I met you all." Wu Bo did not describe many details, probably because he did not want to recall that terrifying scene. Chang Gu. Is he the deceased? Is he a restaurant staff member? I haven't seen him before. He Jiehui asked immediately. He's not a restaurant staff member, but someone who comes to deliver food. When he comes to deliver food, you all start classes, so naturally it's impossible to see him, Wu Bo replied. What is his name? How old is he? He Jiehui continued. I only know his surname is Lin, about 40 years old. He used to work in clubs before, so no one dared to provoke him in the market, so he was called Xianga, Wu Bo replied. You said he often comes to deliver groceries, so what time did he come today? He Jiehui asked again. After thinking for a moment, Wu Bo spoke up and said, when he came today, you had already finished breakfast. It must be after 8:30. When was the last time you saw him? He Jiehui continued to ask. I asked him to unload the dishes to the kitchen, and then I didn't see him again. It's also after 8:30, Wu Bo replied. What time did you start making lunch? He Jiehui asked. About a little over 10 o'clock. First brother came at 10 o'clock, and when first brother came, I went to watch the excitement before coming back to make lunch, Wu Bo replied. Have you ever left the restaurant during this period? He Jiehui asked again. No, I've been busy in the kitchen and haven't left, Wu Bo shook his head decisively. Have you seen anyone suspicious enter the kitchen? He Jiehui continued. No, this is a restaurant. If it weren't for dining time, no one would have come here idle. If there were strangers, you could have noticed them right away, Wu Bo replied. He Jiehui nodded and said, that means when Wu Bo started cooking at 10 o'clock, the deceased was already in the freezer. It seems that the time of the deceased's death can be basically determined, which is between 8:30 a.m. and 10 a.m. Reducing the time of death to within 1.5 hours is already a relatively accurate number for investigators. Immediately after, Jiehui suddenly realized a problem. He walked to the kitchen door and shouted to the police officer who was still inside, "Everyone, don't move anything. Back out the way, the kitchen is likely the first scene of the crime." "How did you tell?" someone immediately asked. "Nonsense, this is a police academy. If the perpetrator is killing someone outside and then moving the body, the farther the better. How could the body be moved into the academy?" After a moment of silence, Jiehui continued to explain, "If a person is killed within the police academy, the perpetrator cannot carry the body and avoid so many pairs of eyes in the academy, hiding the person in the kitchen. So the kitchen is likely to be the first scene of the crime." Everyone nodded in a sudden realization and quickly retreated. Jiehui looked at the workbench in the kitchen, where there were 3 knife holders, with kitchen knives placed on them. There were traditional Chinese knives and Western-style knives used in Western cuisine. If this is the first crime scene, then the murder weapon is likely to be. Thinking of this, Jiehui approached Wu Bo again and asked, "Wu Bo, did you notice that something like a kitchen knife was missing when you were cooking today?" After thinking for a moment, Wu Bo spoke up and replied, "It seems like he's missing a kitchen knife that he usually uses to cut salads. Have you ever looked for it?" Jiehui continued. "I didn't look for it because I was in a hurry to cook, maybe I accidentally put it somewhere," Wu Bo replied. Upon learning that he had lost a kitchen knife, Jiehui breathed a sigh of relief, which was highly likely to be the murder weapon. "Wu Bo, what kind of kitchen knife is the lost one? How long and wide is it?" Jiehui asked again. "It's just an ordinary Western-style dining knife, with a pointed front and a wider back, about 30 centimeters long and 3 or 4 centimeters wide." Wu Bo answered. 3 or 4 centimeters wide, which matches the victim's wound, the kitchen knife is likely the murder weapon. Jiehui thought to himself, the identity of the deceased, the time of death, the first scene of the crime, and with the addition of the murder weapon, we can basically confirm it. It's a perfect start. Pink and tender newcomers, pink and tender new books, come in and collect them. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Is the killer myself? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Is the killer myself? The officers are here. Footsteps sounded, and a group of people walked in a grand and mighty manner. Led by the chief of police, Chen Jiaju. The president and 2 vice presidents of the police academy followed closely behind, followed by several supervisors of the police academy. The dean of Xiangjiang Police Academy is generally served by the assistant police chief, with 2 chief police officers serving as deputy deans to assist in their work, while the chief officer in charge of actual operations is the senior police officer. In the training of student police officers, they never see such a level of a sir. The instructors who directly train student police officers are generally at the level of sheriff, while the teaching director is at the level of inspector, which is also the highest level of officer that student police officers can encounter on a daily basis. Nowadays, these police officer level school leaders are appearing here in unison, and their faces are not good. On the day when the director came to inspect, there was a murder case, which was like a slap in the face. The entire police academy's face was completely disgraced. Attention! With Sir's command, all the police officers stood at attention. Director Chen Jiaju nodded slightly at the police officer and then headed straight to the kitchen to examine the body. After more than a minute, he walked out and spoke. Although the body was moved into the freezer by the killer, the kitchen is likely the first scene of the crime. Tell everyone not to move or touch anything, protect the scene, and wait for the forensic department to come over. By the way, who was the first to discover the body? Director of the report, it's the chef Wu Bo from the restaurant. Someone immediately replied. Chen Jiaju nodded and immediately walked up to Wu Bo, saying, "Wu Bo, I have a few questions I want to ask you." How did you discover the body? Don't be nervous, speak slowly. Didn't that student police officer ask this question just now? Why did he ask again? Wu Bo thought to himself and then recounted the process of discovering the body. Jiehui murmured softly, is brother planning to personally investigate the case? Don't you need to wait for the serious case team to come over? Yu Shuali whispered, didn't I tell you before? First brother was a super police officer back then. When he was in the serious crime unit, we weren't even born yet. Now, most of the police officers in charge of the serious crime unit in each district are disciples of first brother. During his speech, Wu Bo also recounted the incident and informed the deceased of the identity of the vegetable delivery worker. Chen Jiaju continued to ask, what time did he come to deliver vegetables today? After 8.30, Wu Bo replied without hesitation. When did you last see him? Chen Jiaju continued. I asked him to go to the kitchen to unload vegetables, but I haven't seen him since, Wu Bo replied. When did you start making lunch? Chen Jiaju continued. After 10 o'clock in the morning. After all the questions were answered once, so Wu Bo didn't need to think and answered fluently. Chen Jiaju nodded and was about to continue questioning when Wu Bo took the initiative to say, I haven't left the kitchen during this time, and no suspicious people have come in. Everyone will answer quickly. Chen Jiaju was slightly taken aback, but immediately discovered a suspicious point. No, how did he know what I was going to ask? And those questions just now, he answered very quickly without thinking at all, like memorizing his lines in advance. He had to be prepared in advance to have this reaction. Is it true that Wu Bo had prepared his statement in advance, so he is the murderer? Thinking of this, Chen Jiaju stared at Wu Bo with a serious expression on his face. Wu Bo didn't realize that in Chen Jiaju's eyes, he had become a suspect. He continued on his own, Sir, I still lost a kitchen knife. I'm busy cooking and haven't had a chance to find it yet. Kitchen knife, what kind of kitchen knife? Chen Jiaju immediately asked. It's just an ordinary Western kitchen knife, usually used for cutting salads, about 30 centimeters long and 4 or 5 centimeters wide, Wu Bo answered. Upon hearing Wu Bo's description of the kitchen knife, Chen Jiaju's first reaction was that the lost knife was likely to be the murder weapon. The location of the incident was Wu Bo's restaurant, and Wu Bo was also the first person to discover the body. He answered questions very fluently and even proactively mentioned the lost kitchen knife. He is really suspicious. With this in mind, Chen Jiaju tentatively asked, Uncle Wu, it seems that your memory is very good. You even remember the incident of throwing the kitchen knife so clearly. If no one asked me, how could I remember these things? Mainly the questions you asked me just now, someone has asked me before, Wu Bo said. Who is it? Chen Jiaju immediately asked, that's him. Wu Bo extended his finger to Jiehui beside him, and everyone's eyes on the scene also turned to Jiehui. He's a student police officer. Chen Jiaju was slightly surprised. The questions just now seemed simple, but each one was purposeful. In just a few sentences, the identity and time of death of the deceased were determined, and it can be inferred that the kitchen was the first scene of the crime. If it were an experienced senior police officer asking such questions, Chen Jiaju was not surprised, but it was somewhat unexpected for these questions to arise from a young student police officer. Upon realizing that the director's gaze was on Jiehui, the police academy instructor next to him immediately said, Jiehui, come over. Jiehui immediately stepped forward and came to Chen Jiaju. He stood at attention and saluted, saying, Sir, 66622 Jiehui reports. 66622 is the police officer number of Jiehui. When the police officers in Xiangjiang are admitted to the police academy, they will have a police officer number. After graduating from the police academy and becoming official police officers, they will continue to use this number. Chen Jiaju looked at Jiehui and asked with a friendly expression, You came to the scene before me. Tell me what you found. Jiehui cleared his throat and said, I think the kitchen is most likely the first scene of the crime, because this is a police academy, and the killer does not have the conditions to move the body. He can only hide the body on the spot after killing. The deceased has been frozen and the time of death cannot be confirmed at the moment, but according to Wu Bo's account, the time of death should be between 8:30 a.m. and 10 o'clock a.m. The deceased had 2 abdominal wounds, which are likely the cause of death. These 2 wounds are both open wounds, with a double opening shape and a lot of bleeding. The wound wall is neat, the wound base is deep, and the wound is sharp, indicating that it was caused by sharp instruments. Has the police academy added forensic courses now? Chen Jiaju turned to ask the principal. Director, currently there is no forensic science in our curriculum, said the principal of the police academy with a confused expression. Chen Jiaju looked at Jiehui in confusion, and Jiehui quickly replied. Director of the report, it's something I usually self-study. I think it will be useful in the future. I see, young people are very ambitious. Chen Jiaju nodded. Jiehui continued, if the kitchen was the first scene of the crime, then the perpetrator must not have had a premeditation, otherwise he should have chosen a more suitable location to kill. Therefore, the perpetrator is likely to have had a temporary conflict with the deceased and then killed them. If there is a temporary conflict, the perpetrator will not prepare the weapon in advance. He is likely to choose a certain tool from the crime scene as the weapon. The best weapon used in the kitchen is a kitchen knife, so I asked Wu Bo if the kitchen knife was lost. Regarding the motive for committing the crime, it is impossible for anyone to rob within the police academy, and the possibility of robbery can be ruled out. The possibility of sexual assault is also unlikely. I don't think either madam from the police academy or a female student police officer would have any emotional entanglement with a food delivery worker in his 40s. If it is a homicide, then the killer cannot choose to commit the crime in the police academy. Excluding robbery, love killing, and homicide, there are only 2 possibilities left. One is a last-minute revenge killing, and the other is that the deceased was killed and silenced for some reason. Chen Jiaju nodded approvingly and said, that's great, 66622, isn't it? It's amazing how many things can be inferred. Even a senior police officer in the serious crime unit may not have done better than you. It seems that our police academy has trained a future detective. The director gave such a high evaluation, which made the officers of the police academy breathe a sigh of relief. Although there was a murder case here, the performance of student police officer Jiehui can be considered as saving some face for the police academy. The instructor looked at Jiehui with a surprised expression on his face. Jiehui's usual grades were not outstanding, but he unexpectedly made a remarkable breakthrough at this time and received praise from the director. At this moment, someone walked in and reported, Director, the members of the district's serious case team are here. A man in his 50s, bald and wearing glasses, walked in and saluted Chen Jiaju. Huang Qifa, the chief inspector of the district's serious case team, said the bald man loudly. Chen Jiaju nodded and said, Inspector Huang, this is up to you. The rest of us will go out first. Chen Jiaju left with a few police officers, while Jiehui and the first few school police officers who arrived at the cafeteria were left behind to cooperate with the serious crime unit to take notes. The forensic doctor and forensic evidence also arrived at the scene, and the forensic doctor confirmed through the wound of the deceased that it was a stabbing wound. The forensic investigation sprayed luminescent ammonia in the kitchen and found a large number of bloodstains, confirming that the kitchen was the first scene of the crime. All of this conforms to Jiehui's reasoning. The serious case team conducted a search for evidence at the scene and surrounding areas, but did not find the lost kitchen knife. It is obvious that the perpetrator intentionally hid the weapon after committing the crime, with the aim of not leaving too many clues for the police. In order to find the murder weapon, the serious crime unit focused on the restaurant and expanded its search scope. They even called in a police dog unit for support, but unfortunately, no evidence has been found yet. There was a murder case in the restaurant, and the kitchen, as the scene of the incident, was also protected. This lunch must have gone missing. However, considering that someone had just died in the kitchen, it is estimated that there are not many people who dare to eat the food when it is served. Ali and the first few people to enter the restaurant, because they had seen the deceased, had no appetite at all, and now they even feel nauseous when they think of the appearance of the body. After cooperating with the serious case team to complete the transcript, a few people returned to the student police dormitory. As soon as they entered, Jiehui was surrounded by other student police officers in the center. "The future detective is back," someone shouted in a loud voice. Jiehui didn't want to be praised and killed. He humbly said, "There's no such thing as a future detective. It's just bragging. Don't take it seriously." However, the crowd continued to praise and say, "Jiehui, you are the title of future detective," but First Brother personally said it. First Brother definitely won't brag. "Yeah, Jiehui, I didn't expect you to know how to solve cases, even the First Brother personally praised you, as you usually don't show off your skills. If it weren't for you, our police academy would have lost face. Our current class of police officers may have become a laughing stock. Fortunately, you reacted promptly and helped the academy regain its reputation. Jiehui, with the praise of First Brother, you will definitely win the Silver Flute Award this year. I don't just see the Silver Flute Award, even the Shui Fu Cup is in your pocket, right? The Silver Flute Award and Shui Fu Cup are honors presented by the Police Academy to graduating police officers. If you can win both awards at the same time, it means you are the best police officer of this year. For student police officers, being able to receive praise from the police chief is an unparalleled achievement, and it is also a bonus point when evaluating awards. After all, even the director praises you. If I don't give you a prize, wouldn't it be that the director has no vision? From a different perspective, how many people in the police force with over 30,000 members can show their faces in front of the chief of police? Anyone whose name can be remembered by the police chief will be easier to get promoted in the future. If Jiehui were really a 19-year-old young man, facing such praise, he would probably be too proud to know the superiority of heaven and earth. But at this moment, Jiehui remained calm. The praise from the police officers around him made him feel like he was being grilled on the fire. You should know that there are many people who want to compete for the Silver Flute Award and the Shui Fu Cup. Now, the director's praise has directly made him a competitor to many people. And the title of Future Detective is indeed too eye-catching. In the future, when Jiehui graduates and enters the police force under the name of Future Detective, he will inevitably be treated differently by his superiors and colleagues. It is difficult to say whether he will be happy or worried. Forget it, take a step and see. Gold always shines. With my abilities and experience, ordinary cases won't be difficult for me. It's not an exaggeration to call me a detective. Before his rebirth, Jiehui was a reconnaissance platoon leader with real combat experience, but in terms of skills, even if the Flying Tigers came, he may not be his opponent. As for the ability to solve cases, a 20-year veteran criminal police officer is not for nothing, he has truly earned the title of detective. After finally getting everyone to stop making noise, Ali walked over again and said, "Jiehui, tell us how you did it at that time. How could you tell from just a few glances that the kitchen was the first scene of the crime, and still guess that the murder weapon was a kitchen knife? Observe carefully and reason carefully." Jiehui paused before continuing, "But first of all, you can't just vomit when you see blood, you have to get used to that kind of scene. Stop talking, if you mention it again, I will vomit again." Ali covered his mouth, looking as if he was about to vomit again, obviously not wanting to reminisce. Jiehui shook his head helplessly. This kind of thing cannot help Ali, he can only let himself adapt. Alize continued, "Speaking of which, today is really unlucky. I was the first to go to the restaurant, but I didn't get my meal and saw something I shouldn't have seen. I have to take a shower to get rid of the bad luck. Do you want to come together?" "Okay, let's do it together." If something like this happens, it's not certain if we can continue training this afternoon. Let's wash ourselves clean first, someone agreed. I said, Ollie, are you afraid of taking a shower alone? That's why you called us, another person joked. Ollie didn't pay any attention to the other person, but looked at Jiehui and asked, Jiehui, you were closest to the deceased at that time, so you must have been covered in corpse gas. Do you want to take a shower? Do you think you're doing a zombie movie? It's still zombie-like. Wait for me to get a towel, Jiehui said, walking to his bedside and opening his wardrobe. Just as the cabinet door opened, something suddenly fell from the cabinet and landed on the ground. Bang! That thing made a metallic collision sound as it came into contact with the ground. Jiehui fixed his eyes and saw that what fell out of his cabinet was actually a Western-style kitchen knife. This kitchen knife has a visual length of 30 centimeters and a width of 4 or 5 centimeters, just like the lost kitchen knife described by Wu Bo. Seeing this kitchen knife, Jiehui was suddenly surprised. What's the situation? How could the murder weapon be in my cabinet? Is it actually me? End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Framing and Framing. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Framing and Framing. A Western-style kitchen knife fell from Jiehui's cabinet, and it seemed like the one lost in the restaurant. At the moment he saw the kitchen knife, Jiehui suddenly felt uneasy. The murder weapon actually appeared in my cabinet. Damn it, I was framed by the killer. Jiehui, your thing fell off, said Ollie next to him. Jiehui's bed was already in the most prominent position in the dormitory, and he happened to be the focus of everyone today. So when the kitchen knife fell to the ground and made a sound, everyone's eyes also turned to Jiehui's side. Especially when Ollie said, something fell, it reminded everyone to look over here, and naturally everyone also saw the kitchen knife that had fallen to the ground. Although the police academy is not a military force, it also has discipline. Prohibited items are not allowed to be brought into the academy. Things like kitchen knives should definitely not appear in the dormitory. Class monitor Qiu Juanchuan's voice echoed from the side. Jiehui, why do you have to hide a knife privately? According to the police academy system, this is a prohibited item and it is not allowed to bring it to the police academy. Each class of student police officers has a class teacher and deputy class teacher, as well as a series of positions such as class monitor, dormitory manager, and equipment manager. These positions are not fixed and rotate regularly, which is also to test the comprehensive quality and leadership ability of student police officers. As a class monitor, it is natural to be responsible for the entire class. Therefore, when prohibited items appear in the dormitory, Qiu Junxian, as the class monitor, is the first to stand up and question, which is also fulfilling his own responsibility. This knife is not mine, Jiehui replied calmly. Everyone can see that this knife fell out of your cabinet, not yours. How could it appear in your cabinet? Jiehui, carrying prohibited items is against school rules, and I will report it to the supervisor. This time, the dormitory chief Zhou Liang was speaking. They are all our own people, there must be some misunderstanding. Speak up if you have something to say. Jiehui, quickly take back the knife. Ollie quickly stood up and became a mediator. However, Jiehui did not reach out to pick up the knife on the ground. He knew that if he reached out to pick it up at this time, his fingerprints would be left on the knife, which was really indescribable. Jiehui, the chief will arrive soon, hoping you can provide a reasonable explanation, said the room chief Zhou Liang, putting on a face of selflessness, obviously to enforce the law impartially. He walked up and looked at the kitchen knife on the ground, his eyebrows furrowed sharply. Then he pointed to the kitchen knife on the ground and asked, you said before that there was a Western-style kitchen knife lost in the restaurant, which was 30 centimeters in length and 4 or 5 centimeters in width, and the lost knife is very likely to be the murder weapon, right? After Zhou Liang's reminding, people responded that the kitchen knife on the ground was exactly like the description of the suspected murder weapon. Is this the murder weapon? How could it appear in our dormitory? Someone asked. Jiehui, why is there a murder weapon in your cabinet? Another person directly questioned Jiehui. The next second, several police officers approaching Jiehui instinctively took a step back, and everyone looked at Jiehui with a shocked expression, clearly thinking he was the murderer. Jiehui, are you probably the murderer? Squad leader Chiu Junxian asked. I'm not the murderer. Jiehui remained calm as before. Chief Zhou Liang spoke up. I heard that you only took a few glances and knew that the kitchen was the first crime scene, and you also knew that the murder weapon was a kitchen knife. This itself is very suspicious. Another layer of meaning in Zhou Liang's words is clearly that if you were not the murderer, how could you know so much? Jiehui replied calmly, they were all inferred based on the on-site investigation situation. Zhou Liang continued to question, there is one thing that is also very suspicious. I heard that when others see the body, they dare not take a second look, and some people just vomit. But you, after seeing the body, not only do you not react, but you actively approach it. Have you seen similar scenes before? Zhou Liang's subtext is that you must be the murderer, so when you see the body, you are not afraid at all, but rather very calm. I have a lot of courage, Jiehui replied with only 4 words. However, others clearly did not believe Jiehui's statement, including Ali. Everyone took a step back, as if worried that Jiehui, the killer, would suddenly erupt and harm him. At this moment, Jiehui's mind became unprecedentedly clear. He didn't panic at all, but looked at his cabinet and checked the situation inside. When he was tidying up the internal affairs in the morning, Jiehui arranged all his personal belongings neatly according to military standards, and now in the cabinet, there are obvious traces of items being touched. More importantly, one of the sportswear worn during training is missing. In the cabinet, my sportswear is missing one piece. Jiehui furrowed his brows and quickly deduced a result. This murderer wants to frame me, but unfortunately, his intelligence is often mistaken by his intelligence. Sometimes, he makes more mistakes than he does. The police academy instructor quickly arrived at the dormitory. Upon learning of the situation, he looked at Jiehui with a complex expression, unsure of what to say. Jiehui has just regained some face for the police academy, even being praised by the police chief as a future detective, which can be said to have a bright future for the police. But in the blink of an eye, a suspected kitchen knife was found in Jiehui's cabinet, and the future detective instantly became the biggest suspect. Jiehui, who usually doesn't show off his beauty, has an ordinary performance. Today, he really surprised me. The first time was a surprise, this time was a shock. If he is really the murderer, then something really big will happen. The murderer analyzed the case fiercely in front of his elder brother, and he even praised him personally. If this gets out, not to mention our police academy, the entire police force will be ashamed. The instructor is also in a state of confusion at this moment, not knowing what to do. A rapid sound of footsteps echoed outside, and the serious crime unit and forensic evidence also arrived. I am Huang Qifa, the chief inspector of the district's serious case team. Huang Qifa's voice rang out. Inspector Huang, the situation is like this. The instructor began to introduce the case to Huang Qiqi. The forensic evidence next to him also started working. He sprayed luminescent ammonia onto the kitchen knife, and there was indeed a reaction of blood stains on it. The forensic evidence slowly said, there are bloodstains on it, and the shape and width of the knife also matched the situation of the deceased's wound. As for whether this knife is a murder weapon, it needs to be taken back and further compared with the wound to confirm. Is there a fingerprint on the knife? A voice asked from the side. This knife should have been cleaned and no fingerprints have been found so far, the forensic expert subconsciously replied, looking at the source of the sound. It turned out to be Jiehui who raised this question. The kitchen knife fell out of his cabinet, isn't he a suspect? Why do you still have the mind to ask if there are fingerprints? The forensic examiner said roast. Jiehui, are you confirming whether you have wiped your fingerprints clean? Do you think that if there are no fingerprints on the murder weapon, you can cover up your crime? Said the room chief Zhou Liang with a sinister tone. Then he continued, Sir, Jiehui's behavior is very suspicious. When others see the body, they dare not approach, but he is not afraid at all. Instead, he dares to approach. I heard that many murderers will return to the crime scene after killing someone. Zhou Liang, there is no evidence, don't talk nonsense. The instructor snorted coldly. The chief inspector of the serious crime unit, Huang Qifa, spoke up and said, Jiehui, right. He found a suspected weapon in your cabinet. You need to come with us. This knife is not mine, it was someone else who put it in my cabinet, trying to frame me, Jiehui explained calmly. Jiehui, you are a student police officer and have also studied police regulations. You should know how to cooperate with the police's work, Huang Qifa said, taking out handcuffs and continuing, you don't need to explain now. When you reach the serious case team, there is plenty of time for you to explain. They are all going to be taken away by the serious case team, and of course, Jiehui cannot sit idly by. He immediately threw a shock bomb. Wait a moment, I already know who the culprit who framed me is. The show has just begun, don't forget to bookmark it. Thank you for passing the level. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Breaking the Game. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4 Breaking the Game. I already know who the culprit who framed me is. Jiehui threw his own shock grenade. Huang Qifa didn't take it to heart. He only thought that Jiehui was looking for excuses to argue, so he continued to use the old cliché, if there's anything, wait until the serious case team speaks slowly. Jiehui could only speak up and say, Inspector Huang, why don't you give me 5 minutes to listen to my reasoning? Maybe it will help you solve the case. Even if what I say is all nonsense, you only lose 5 minutes. Even if you can get a little clue in 5 minutes, you still make a profit. Huang Qiqi thought for a moment and felt that what Jiehui said made sense. He nodded and said, okay, I'll give you 5 minutes. Jiehui pointed to the suspected knife and said, I haven't seen this knife before. It was the culprit who wanted to frame me and put it in my cabinet. Of course, if I say these things now, you won't believe it, so why don't we make a hypothesis? Let's assume that I was framed by the killer, so at least one thing can be confirmed. The killer's identity is a police officer. There are so many people in the police academy, besides student police officers, instructors, and various logistic support personnel. How do you know that the identity of the killer is a student police officer, not anyone else? Huang Qifa asked. The only ones who can enter the student police dormitory area are the student police and instructors, and other idle people cannot enter, Jiehui said. The culprit may not be a student police officer, but it could also be a police academy instructor. Huang Qifa had just finished speaking and quickly said to the instructor on site, I don't mean anything else, I'm just suggesting a possibility. Understood, when it comes to handling cases, we should consider various possibilities. The instructor expressed understanding. Jiehui explained, the killer took the weapon from the crime scene, obviously with the intention of not leaving too many clues for the police. So next, he should hide the weapon and not be found by the police. But if the culprit chooses to frame the blame on me, it means he cannot find a suitable location to hide the weapon. Therefore, his identity must be a police officer, not an instructor. Because the range of activities of instructors within the police academy is unrestricted, and instructors do not need to undergo closed management. As long as they are not on duty, they can go home. So if the killer is a certain instructor, then he can directly take the weapon away without leaving any clues to the police. Why bother framing someone else? School police officers are different. According to regulations, the scope of their activities is limited and they are all in public areas. It is impossible for the perpetrator to hide the weapon in public areas, as it is easy to be detected, which is why they choose to blame others. You make sense, the instructor next to him nodded in agreement. Jiehui's reasoning excludes the possibility of the instructor committing the crime, and the instructor certainly needs to give a thumbs up. Huang Qifa spoke up and said, "Your reasoning has indeed narrowed down the scope of the killer, but don't forget that you are also a student police officer, and you can also hide the weapon yourself. The biggest suspect is based on you." "I haven't finished speaking yet," Jiehui continued, "I was just talking about the murder weapon. Now let's talk about things other than the murder weapon. I just found out that while I have an extra kitchen knife in my cabinet, there is also something missing." "What is missing?" Huang Qiqi asked. "I'm missing a training sportswear," Jiehui answered. "When police officers enter the police academy, they will be uniformly distributed with clothing, including uniforms, belts, boots, and several sets of sportswear required for daily training. The quantity of each person is fixed. If damaged or lost, you need to report to the instructor before you can claim it again." I only heard Jiehui continue to say, "This morning, I just tidied up the cabinet, and it was clear what was inside. When I opened the cabinet, I found that I was missing a sportswear. Since the cabinet has just been organized by me, the person who framed me must have taken my sportswear. At that time, I was thinking, why did he steal my sportswear while putting the murder weapon in my cabinet? After that, I finally figured it out." As Jiehui spoke, he looked at the forensic staff and then asked, "The kitchen knife that seems to be the murder weapon fell out of my cabinet. According to the forensic workflow, should I take a sample of my cabinet for evidence next?" Fa Jing nodded and said, "According to our operating procedures, we will indeed collect evidence from your cabinet, including your personal belongings, and we will also take them away for testing. Although the first scene of the crime was cleaned up, I believe you also found a large amount of blood residue, right?" Jiehui continued. "I cannot disclose the details of the case," replied the forensic examiner. "If evidence is collected on Jiehui's personal belongings, according to regulations, the parties involved should be notified, so the legal evidence is not concealed. However, the situation at the first scene of the case involves specific circumstances, and the legal evidence cannot be disclosed. However," Jiehui smiled slightly and said, "You don't have to hide it from me. When your forensic team arrived at the crime scene to collect evidence, I also took a statement there. I knew that a large amount of blood was found in the kitchen, so I can confirm that it is the first crime scene. The perpetrator stabbed the deceased twice, injuring the organs. There were so many bloodstains at the scene of the crime, and the deceased also shed so much blood. In addition, the perpetrator had to move the deceased to the freezer and handle the scene, so the perpetrator's clothes would inevitably be stained with the victim's blood. That's why the killer stole the sportswear from my wardrobe. You can imagine that if the forensic evidence were to collect evidence of the items in my wardrobe and found that there were no bloodstains on all of my clothes, the police could easily infer that I was framed. So while the killer put the murder weapon in my wardrobe, he deliberately took away a sportswear. When the police investigate, if they find that one sportswear is missing, they will think that I have hidden the clothes with blood stains. Although the suspected interests belong to the defendant, the murder weapon was found here with me, and with the hidden clothes, it is easy to form a complete chain of evidence. The police will inevitably focus on me when the case is solved, and the real culprit can also take the opportunity to eliminate the suspicion. It's amazing. I can't help but applaud you." Huang Qifa snorted coldly and continued, "But what you said is just speculation. You still have no evidence to prove that you were framed. However, your words also reminded me that it is very likely that you intentionally hid the clothes you wore when committing the crime, and then took the opportunity to deceive the police's attention, hoping to escape legal sanctions. Next, I will focus on searching for the sportswear you wore when you committed the crime." Jiehui smiled calmly and said, "Inspector Huang, you're right. I can't be ruled out yet. So now there are two possibilities. The first one is what I said. I was framed by the killer, who stole my sportswear and created a chain of evidence. The second possibility is, as you said, I am the culprit. In order to confuse the police, I deliberately hid the sportswear and fabricated a story, hoping to get rid of the crime. But both of these situations have a necessary prerequisite, which is that when the perpetrator committed the crime, their clothes must have been stained with the blood of the deceased. The police only need to follow this direction to investigate and quickly locate the culprit. A sir doesn't need you to teach him how to handle the case, Huang Qifa said with a displeased expression. But as I mentioned earlier, the culprit was a student police officer. And the culprit's clothes were stained with a large amount of blood, making things easier. Jiehui looked at the forensic personnel next to him and continued, "You should have brought a lot of fluorescent amine reagents, right? Just spray them on the sportswear of all the police officers and see whose clothes have blood stains, then who is the real culprit. Don't forget to bookmark it after everyone has finished reading it. By the way, could you please give me a recommended ticket? Thank you." End of this chapter. Chapter 5. True Culprit Caught. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. True Culprit Caught. After listening to Jiehui's reasoning, the forensic expert turned to Huang Qifa. Huang Qifa is the official in charge of this case, and also the chief inspector. The issue of investigating the case still depends on Huang Qifa's decision-making. Huang Qiqi's face was gloomy, and his reason told him that he could try following Jiehui's reasoning. If he really did what Jiehui said, he could solve the case immediately. But as the chief inspector of the serious case team, being taught how to solve a case by a student police officer, Wu Qifa did feel a bit embarrassed. So he hesitated to speak, struggling between solving the case and saving face. Jiehui has seen through Huang Qifa's mind. He lowered his voice and said, "Inspector Huang, you are a sir in charge of this case. If the case is solved, how to write the report is not your own the final say." A sentence from Jiehui woke up the person in his dream, and Huang Qiqi instantly realized that even if he was taught to solve a case by a police officer, he could only add more credit to himself when writing the closing report. With this in mind, Huang Qifa planned to accept Jiehui's suggestion. He turned his head to look at the forensic examination. He was about to ask the forensic examination to test everyone's sportswear, but someone in the crowd spoke up and said, "Jiehui, the murder weapon clearly appeared in your cabinet, and you are the biggest suspect. Why did you implicate us in the investigation together? This is unfair to us." Jiehui turned his head and saw that it was the class monitor Qiu Junxian who was shouting. "Are you worried about being investigated and leaving yourself with bad records, which may affect your chances of winning the Silver Flute Award? Or may it affect your promotion after becoming a police officer?" Jiehui asked calmly. If a student police officer wants to win the Silver Flute Award and Shui Fu Cup upon graduation, they not only need to look at their performance in each assessment, but also their daily performance. If they have a bad record, they will almost miss the award. Similarly, after becoming a police officer, a student police officer will refer to their past performance for every promotion. If they carry a record of being investigated by a serious crime team, it is not very attractive. Class monitor Qiu Junxian has always performed excellently, often achieving first place in assessments. He is definitely aiming for the Silver Flute Award or the Shui Fu Cup, and it is normal not to have any stains on his personal record. The neighboring room chief Zhou Yang also spoke up and said, "According to Jiehui's teachings, then everyone here may be the culprit. Should we check every one of us? Everyone's records will be affected then." As soon as this statement was spoken, other police officers expressed agreement, as it concerns personal interests. Even the instructor chimed in, "Inspector Huang, I think if we were to investigate all the police officers, it would indeed cause panic. This large-scale investigation will not only affect personal records, but also our future training." The student police were worried about the impact on their personal records, the instructor was worried about the difficulty of leading the team in the future, and Huang Qiqi felt a little soft-hearted and hesitated again. "It seems that I still need to take action." Jiehui sighed lightly and continued, "I don't want to cause trouble for us sir and all the classmates either. Let's start over the case and narrow down the scope of investigation. The time of death for the deceased was between 8.30 and 10.00. The first scene of the crime was in the kitchen, so the perpetrator met the deceased in the kitchen after 8.30. Due to the fact that the murderer was not prepared to kill before, he casually used the kitchen knife as a weapon to kill the deceased. Then the killer needs to transport the deceased's body and hide it in the freezer, clean up the bloodstains on the scene and the murder weapon, and during this process, the killer's clothes will inevitably be stained with the deceased's blood. This is a police academy, where people are everywhere. If the perpetrator is wearing a blood-stained clothing and moving around the academy, it will be too conspicuous and will be seen by others, and his actions will be exposed. So the killer needs to do one more thing, which is to clean up the bloodstains on his clothes when cleaning up the scene, and then return to the dormitory, so as not to be noticed. Cleaning up the bloodstains will definitely wet the clothes, which will greatly reduce the scope. You can recall that during the time period from 8.30 to 9.30 this morning when we gathered, whoever's clothes were wet could have been the culprit. Wait a minute. There's a loophole in your statement. Huang Qifa suddenly interrupted Jiehui and continued, the killer was a last-minute murderer, and it's impossible to prepare clothes to change beforehand. According to your statement, although the killer cleared the bloodstains, his clothes were also wet, which means he has to wear a wet outfit to show off in the police academy. Today is a sunny day. Wearing a wet piece of clothing, wouldn't it arouse other suspicion, Inspector Huang? If you wear a suit and tie like this, but your clothes are wet, it would indeed make people suspect. But if you are wearing sportswear, sweating profusely, and have just returned from outside, when you see that the front and back of the sportswear are all wet, do you think it's water or sweat? Jiehui continued, this is a police academy, and there is never a lack of hard-working police officers. Many students take time to practice more after completing their daily training to improve their grades. The murderer just needs to say that he has just increased his physical fitness, and those who see him will think that his clothes are wet with sweat. So the question is, after breakfast today, which student did not immediately return to the dormitory and instead went to practice their physical fitness? Jiehui said, scanning the crowd with a sharp eagle-like gaze. Then he continued, actually, the scope of investigation can be further narrowed. The perpetrator put the murder weapon in my cabinet and took away one of my sportswear. It is impossible to carry out this in a crowded environment, as it is easy for others to discover. So he must find a time when there are few or no people to do this. We can investigate who were the last few people to leave the dormitory when we gathered at 9.30, and who were the first few people to return after the morning training. The last to leave and the first to return both have time to commit the crime, and there are also people who go out to exercise after breakfast. I don't think there are many people who meet these conditions, right? I remember Qiu Junxian went to practice his physical fitness after breakfast. Someone looked at the class monitor. Junxian was the first to gather, he didn't have time to release the weapon, said another person. After breakfast, Wei also went to practice, right? And he came back early at noon, someone said. Someone immediately responded, when I was practicing in the morning, I was with Ah Wei and Ah Zhong. The three of us can prove to each other that we haven't been to a restaurant. By the way, when I went downstairs, I met Zhou Liang. His clothes were wet, and I even said how he practiced so hard, his clothes were soaked through, someone said again. Class monitor Qiu Junxian also remembered something. When I said that, I remembered. Before training, I was responsible for counting the number of people. When we gathered at 9.30, Zhou Liang was the last one to arrive. The next second, everyone's gaze turned to the room chief Zhou Liang. But Zhou Liang suddenly turned around and rushed towards the door, intending to escape. Stop him! Huang Qifa shouted. At the door, Huang Qifa's subordinates heard his shout and immediately blocked the door, easily subduing Zhou Liang. Where is his wardrobe? Huang Qiqi continued to ask. It's this. The instructor quickly pointed to Zhou Liang's wardrobe. Huang Qifa looked at Fa Zheng, who nodded and walked towards the wardrobe with his toolbox. Inside, he found Zhou Liang's sportswear and sprayed it with luminescent ammonia. "There is a bloodstain reaction," said the forensic expert. Jiehui took a deep breath and said, "The murderer has been found, and the truth has come to light. Don't forget to save it, by the way, everyone. Thank you for passing the level." End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Pulling out carrots and bringing out mud. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Pulling out carrots and bringing out mud. In fact, when Zhou Liang chose to escape, it was like a werewolf exploding on its own. However, when handling the case, we still need to talk about evidence. The sports clothes in Zhou Liang's cabinet showed blood stains, which is the most direct evidence. Next, only DNA testing is needed to confirm that the blood is from the deceased, and Zhou Liang can be convicted. At the moment when the forensic evidence revealed a blood reaction, Huang Qifa's handcuffs were already handcuffed to Zhou Liang's wrist. "Zhou Liang, you are suspected of a murder case, and I want to arrest you now. You have the right to remain silent now, but every word you say will become evidence in court," Huang Qifa said, using the old saying of Hong Kong police arresting people. Zhou Liang also knew that he was done for. He glared fiercely at Jiehui and spoke up, "Jiehui, I really didn't expect it to fall into your hands in the end. Indeed, you shouldn't have chosen me as the object of blame. However, my wardrobe is the most prominent position in the dormitory, and it's understandable for you to choose me." Jiehui pointed to his cabinet and continued. "In fact, when I saw that kitchen knife, you were already the object of my suspicion. As the room manager, it is reasonable for you to be the last to leave the dormitory or the first to come back, so you have the time to frame me for committing the crime. But that's just doubt. Besides you, there are other suspicious objects in my heart. I think when the murder weapon falls from the cabinet and I don't touch it, you should be starting to panic, right? My fingerprints are not on the murder weapon, which is beyond your plan. So you take the initiative to step out and use words to target me, deliberately saying some guiding words to make everyone think that I am the culprit. That was when I could almost confirm that you were the real culprit." When Jiehui said this, he was also somewhat relieved in his heart. If Zhou Liang's framing methods were more meticulous, Jiehui would not have solved the case in such a short time. From the perspective of post-event review, there are significant loopholes in Zhou Liang's framing method, and the implementation of the entire plan is uncontrollable factors. But considering that Jiehui initiated the murder on a whim, being able to think of such a tactic is already very adaptable. "You're right. The biggest mistake I made was being too anxious and eager to convict you so that I could get rid of my suspicion. On the contrary, it revealed a flaw." Zhou Liang sighed. "No, your biggest mistake was choosing to commit a crime." Jiehui coldly looked at Zhou Liang and asked, "Tell me your motive for committing the crime. Are you having grudges against the deceased or are you killing someone to silence them?" "It's silence," Zhou Liang answered, and at this point, he had no intention of concealing it. Zhou Liang slowly explained, "Actually, I am also a member of the club. The boss I am with is called Han Chen. Because I have no criminal record, Han Chen sent me to apply to the police academy so that I can become his mole in the police force and provide him with intelligence in the future." Han Chen. Upon hearing the name, Huang Qiqi frowned fiercely. "Inspector Huang, it seems you know this person named Han Chen." Jiehui said. "Of course I know him. Han Chen's files at the police station are 2 meters thick. Not only our serious case team, but also OJ and the Drug Investigation Department consider him a thorn in the eye. Unfortunately, for so many years, we have not found conclusive evidence to bring him to justice." Huang Qiqi said, as if realizing something. He looked excited and asked, "I remember the witness said that the deceased had also been in a club before. Did he know Han Chen's secret, so Han Chen asked you to kill him and silence him?" Han Chen is a big fish, and it would be a great achievement for Huang Qifa if he could be charged with hiring a murderer. I really don't know how this guy became the chief inspector. Jiehui sighed helplessly in his heart. Later, Jiehui spoke up and said, if Han Chen wants to take down the deceased, wouldn't it be more convenient to find a killer outside? Why bother taking action inside the police academy? That's right. Huang Qiqi showed a disappointed expression and couldn't find a reason to convict Han Chen. The big fish ran away, and the credit was gone. Zhou Liang continued, I didn't kill Changgu, the deceased, at the command of Han Chen. It was because Changgu recognized me. Changgu used to be a member of a club and had seen me before. Qianga arranged for me to meet in the kitchen and extorted 50,000 yuan from me, otherwise he would report me to the police academy as a member of the club. I refused to agree to him, so we started arguing. In a fit of anger, I picked up a knife and stabbed Chang twice. 50,000 yuan is not too much, there's no need to kill, right? Huang Qifa said casually. Zhou Liang explained, if he wanted more, I might feel at ease. It's because he wanted too little that I wanted to kill him. I'm worried that if I give him 50,000 yuan this time, he will ask for another 50,000 yuan next time, and it will be endless and become a bottomless pit. I don't want to be constantly threatened, so why not kill him? Actually, I was also on a whim. I just wanted him to stop looking for me. I didn't want to kill him. It wasn't until I found out that Chang was dead that I realized the situation was not good. This is a police academy, I have no place to hide corpses. And once Chang's body is discovered, the police are likely to find me. So I came up with a way to frame the blame on others. As long as I can find an unlucky person to take the blame, the police investigation will not notice me. When I wait until the weekend vacation to go home, I will have a chance to run away. As Jiehui guessed, I put Chang's body in the freezer, cleaned up the scene, and washed the bloodstains off my clothes. Fortunately, the bloodstains were all on the front of my clothes, making it easy to disguise them as sweat. Then I returned to the dormitory, pretended to have just finished practicing and went to the bathroom to take a shower. When you all went down to gather at 9:30, I immediately returned to the dormitory, put the murder weapon in Jiehui's cabinet, and then went downstairs to gather. Is that all? Jiehui asked with some confusion. You have already deduced my modus operandi, what else do you want to hear? Do you want me to praise you a few words of, future detective? Zhou Liang said sarcastically. Jiehui furrowed his brow slightly, knowing that Zhou Liang should have concealed something, which was not Zhou Liang's true motive for killing. Even if Zhou Liang is reported, he is not yet a formal police officer and has not leaked any intelligence from the police force to Han Chen. The highest punishment is to be dismissed from the police academy without assuming criminal responsibility. It's better to continue being a fool in the future than to go to jail. Killing someone for this matter is definitely not worth it. Jiehui concluded that there should be other secrets hidden between Zhou Liang and the deceased. After hesitating for 2 seconds, Jiehui decided not to expose Zhou Liang for now. If this is the case he is responsible for, he will definitely dig into the truth, but after all, he is only a student police officer, not even a formal police officer. Xiangjiang does not have the death penalty. If Zhou Liang kills someone in the police academy, he should be sentenced to life imprisonment, which is already the highest punishment in Xiangjiang's punishment. Zhou Liang has also received the punishment he deserves. So Jiehui changed his voice and asked, did Han Chen only send you to infiltrate the police force? Are there any other spies? I don't know. At least there are no members of any clubs I know among this group of student police officers, Zhou Liang answered. What about the former student police officers? Is there anyone from Han Chen? Jiehui continued to ask. Zhou Liang shook his head and said, I don't know about this. Did Han Chen give you any special instructions before sending you here? Jiehui continued. Zhou Liang thought for a moment and answered, before Han Chen sent me here, he once took me to the temple to pay respects to the Buddha. I remember when he said, once you achieve great success, your bones will wither, and you will choose your own path. He also said that he would come to the temple every year at this time, asking the Buddha to bless us with peace. It's really pulling out carrots and bringing out mud. Upon hearing this answer, Jiehui smiled and looked at Huang Qiqi, asking, Inspector Huang, I've done you another big favor. Do you have to treat me to a meal? What does it mean? Huang Qiqi has not yet realized. Jiehui immediately answered, every year Han Chen takes his younger brother to pay respects to Buddha, which means he sends people to take the exam for the police force every year. Over the years, how many Han Chen spies have been lurking in the police force? If this kind of thing is reported, it will definitely startle Big Brother. Inspector Huang, here's your chance to make contributions. Don't forget to bookmark it after reading it, all book enthusiasts. Thank you. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. The Inner Ghost in Action. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. The Inner Ghost in Action. Inspector Lu Jianming, dressed in a handsome suit, walked into the office of the Criminal Intelligence Department. Sir Lu, good morning. The young female colleague greeted Lu Jianming with a smile, while also casting a seductive glance. Good morning. Lu Jianming politely responded, but ignored the other person's seductive eyes. The female colleague let out a sigh of disappointment, and it was another day when the falling flowers intentionally flowed mercilessly. Officer Lu, I bought you coffee. A young police officer walked over with coffee and a stack of ingredients. His name is De B, he is a police officer in the Criminal Intelligence Department and a subordinate of Lu Jianming. Thank you very much. Lu Jianming took the coffee and immediately took a sip. Sir Lu, there is also a personal information registration form that you need to fill out. Big B handed a copy of the form to Lu Jianming. Let's leave it there for now, I'll fill it out later, Lu Jianming said. Sir Lu, this form needs to be submitted today, Big B explained. What kind of table? It's so urgent. Lu Jianming said as he picked up the table. De B immediately explained, I heard it was a form sent by the Security Bureau, and all police officers in the police force who have served for less than 15 years need to fill it out. Xiangjiang has 3 companies and 12 bureaus, and the Security Bureau is one of them. The Security Bureau is in charge of the police force, customs, immigration department, correctional services department, flight service team, fire department, medical assistance team, and civil safety service team. In other words, the disciplinary forces in Xiangjiang are mostly under the jurisdiction of the Security Bureau, except for the Independent Commission Against Corruption. Due to the fact that the Security Bureau is the direct superior of the police force, when the police force conducts internal investigations, it is often the Security Bureau who takes the initiative to avoid mutual protection among police officers. Upon hearing the 3 words, Security Bureau, Lu Jianming's heart trembled, but his face did not show it. His husband took a sip of coffee to ease his emotions, then picked up the form and read it carefully, pretending to be casual, saying, For police officers with less than 15 years of experience, most of us in the CIB, Criminal Intelligence Department, have to fill out the form. There is quite a lot of information to fill out this time, even the residential address before entering the police force needs to be written. Why did the Security Bureau suddenly think of collecting this information? De B put on a mysterious look and said, It's because there was a murder case at the police academy a few days ago. I know about this matter. I heard that it was a homicide that occurred on the day my first brother went to inspect, but it was also solved on the same day. The culprit was a student police officer, and the victim was a vegetable delivery worker. This case was solved by Huang Qifa, the chief inspector of the district's serious case team. Lu Jianming asked. The Criminal Intelligence Department is responsible for collecting intelligence, and the homicide cases that occurred at the police academy cannot be concealed from Lu Jianming's ears. De B explained, based on the information I have learned, the perpetrator intended to frame the blame on other police officers. Unexpectedly, the police officer he framed was very powerful. On the spot, he used his reasoning to expose the perpetrator. I see, how did Huang Qiqi become so capable that he could solve the case on the same day? It turns out someone helped him. Lu Jianming continued, what does this have to do with me filling out forms? It's because the killer confessed that he was actually an insider sent by the club to the police academy. Big B answered. Lu Jianming snorted coldly and said, which club is it? It's really a bear's heart and leopard's courage. How dare you put your hand into the police force? It's Han Chen. Big B continued, I heard that in recent years, Han Chen has sent people to test the police force every year, so there is already an insider of Han Chen in the police force, and it is very likely that he has become a commander. This time, the Security Bureau asked us to fill out a form in the hope of screening out the insider that Han Chen planted in the police force. I see. Lu Jianming smiled and nodded before speaking, okay, I'll fill it out as soon as possible. I'll call you when I finish it. Officer Lu, then I'll go out first. Big B turned around and left. As soon as Big B walked out of the office, Lu Jianming's face instantly became gloomy. He looked at the table in front of him, but his heart was filled with panic. In the interrogation room, Sheriff Huang Jiqing of the Serious Crime Division stared coldly at the other side. Across from Huang Jiqing sat a short man who looked chubby and had gray hair, trying to open a disposable plastic bowl. This chubby man is none other than Han Chen. Han Chen opened the plastic bowl and a fragrance immediately overflowed, filling the entire interrogation room. Sir Huang, do you want to taste the tough shark fin? I'll treat you. Han Chen said in a hoarse voice. I have reason to detain you for 48 hours for attempting to bribe police officers. Huang Jiqing said coldly. Hee, bribery, what should I use? Is this bowl of mouthwash? Han Chen finished speaking, took a big sip of shark fin, then rinsed his mouth and spat directly onto the ground. Rinse your mouth with shark fin in person, Han Chen's subtext is, I'll treat you to mouthwash. Han Chen, don't be arrogant. A nearby police officer immediately glared angrily at each other. Han Chen pursed his lips disdainfully and said, I almost forgot that spitting everywhere will result in a fine. It's okay, I'll accept the punishment. Han Chen said and directly took out 1,000 yuan bill and threw it on the table. Faced with such humiliation, the police officer wished he could immediately pull out his gun and kill Han Chen. He was about to explode, but was stopped by Huang Jiqing. Huang Jiqing is very clear that if police officers argue with the club leader, they will definitely not get any benefits. Huang Jiqing took a deep breath to calm himself down, then took out a photo and placed it in front of Han Chen, asking, Han Chen, do you know this person? Han Chen glanced at the photo with the corner of his eye and then said, is he a celebrity? Why do I know him? Once I give you a hint, his name is Zhou Liang and he's under your command. Do you still say you don't know him? Huang Jiqing stared at Han Chen with his eyes fixed on him. Han Chen had also seen the world before. He didn't appear panicked, but smiled slightly and said, I have so many subordinates, and not every one of them knows me. Officer Huang, can you know every police officer in your police station? Han Chen, Zhou Liang has already explained that a few months ago you sent him to take the police academy exam, hoping to put him in the police force as an insider and provide you with intelligence about the police force. Huang Jiqing continued. Oh, is there such a thing? I seem to have some impression that I asked him to take the police academy entrance exam. So what? Han Chen leaned forward slightly and looked straight into Huang Jiqing's eyes, then said, may I ask which law Huang, in Xiangjiang, has been violated by persuading people to take the police force exam and serve the citizens? The two of them looked at each other, and at that moment, the air seemed to freeze, and those around them only felt that even breathing had become an unnecessary action. A few seconds later, Huang Jiqing took the lead in retracting his gaze, then turned around and turned his back to Han Chen, casually saying, let go. Han Chen immediately stood up, picked up the half bowl of shark fin, and said forcefully, the taste of this shark fin is too bland. Officer Huang, please ask me to assist in the investigation next time. Please let me know in advance so that I have time to order abalone. The next time I might see you in the morgue, I'll buy you 4-head abalone braised pork. Huang Jicheng snorted coldly. Sir Huang, it's not certain who will enter the morgue first. Han Chen turned around and left. Sir, is that all we have to do to let him go? Said the nearby police officer indignantly. Do you think you can use this kind of thing to convict Han Chen? Huang Jicheng revealed an old fox-like smirk and murmured to himself, but who doesn't have a backup yet? On the rooftop of a certain building, Huang Jicheng gazed into the distance with his hands on his hips, as if enjoying the scenery of the Xiangjiang River. The door to the rooftop opened and Chen Yongren, wearing a black leather jacket, walked out. The sunlight shone on Chen Yongren's face, making him feel a bit dazzling. He instinctively turned his back to block his eyes. Huang Jicheng turned around and said, "A typhoon is coming soon. It's only over 20 degrees today, and the sun is not very strong. It's too dark in the hallway, and after staying too long, I'm not used to the sunshine," Chen Yongren said as he walked up to Huang Jicheng. The two stood side by side, and Huang Jicheng asked directly, what actions did Han Chen take after leaving the police station? No, it's still as usual, Chen Yongren answered. He didn't contact the mole planted in the police force. Huang Jicheng continued to ask. Chen Yongren turned around fiercely and stared at Huang Jicheng with an excited tone, saying, "There is an insider of Han Chen in the police force, and you only found out now. So I've been working for nothing in these years. With an insider providing intelligence to Han Chen, how can we capture his criminal evidence?" Huang Jicheng could feel Chen Yongren's anger. It took Chen Yongren several years just to sneak around Han Chen, not to mention that being an undercover agent could result in a complete death at any time. The efforts and sacrifices made by Chen Yongren are likely to be wasted due to the police's insider. If it were anyone else, they would be angry and unwilling. Faced with Chen Yongren's anger, Huang Jicheng was somewhat speechless. After a few seconds of silence, he spoke up and said, "Ren, the police have an insider providing intelligence to Han Chen. It's difficult for us to find evidence of his crime, so we need to find the insider as soon as possible. If we dig out the insider one day earlier, you can also complete the task one day earlier." Got it. Chen Yongren sighed helplessly, but his eyes showed a hint of annoyance as he spoke. "I will keep an eye on Han Chen's movements." Han Chen walked into the cinema and headed straight to a relatively rear seat to sit down. He is not tall, and his feet can be lifted just enough to rest on the backrest of the front seat. "The police are investigating the mole. It's very dangerous for you to meet me now." A voice sounded from behind Han Chen's side, and it was the Criminal Intelligence Inspector Lu Jianming speaking. Han Chen did not turn back, but showed a deep expression and asked in a low voice, "How did Zhou Liang expose himself?" "You should have news from CIB, right? He killed someone in the police academy and then framed it for another student police officer, but that student police officer was also very clever and found evidence on the spot to expose him," Lu Jianming introduced. "It turned out to be just an accident. Since it wasn't the police's proactive screening, then you're not in danger," Han Chen let out a sigh of relief. Lu Jianming noticed the word "you," and immediately asked, "How many spies have you planted in the police force?" "Hee, the less you know about this kind of thing, the safer it will be." Han Chen smiled contemptuously. The panic in Lu Jianming's eyes flashed by, and he remained silent for a few seconds before standing up and speaking, "The investigation is strict. For safety reasons, please don't contact me again in the near future. Officer Lu, if I don't contact you, how can I provide you with intelligence to help you get promoted?" Han Chen finally turned his head and looked at Lu Jianming, then continued, "I recently received a message about the top 10 bandits. Do you have any news about the top 10 bandits?" Lu Jianming abruptly stopped his steps. I have received news that the Dragon and Tiger brothers among the top 10 bandits have been feeling a bit tight lately. If you can catch them, it should be enough for you to participate in the interview for the senior inspector, right? Han Chen said. Upon hearing this, Lu Jianming did not hesitate and immediately sat back in his original position. On the contrary, Han Chen stood up and said, "Keep the phone open. If there is any news, I will notify you." Huanghuking Police Academy, Principal's Office. Jiehui knocked on the door and walked in, only to see that in addition to the principal of the police academy, several senior officials including the vice principal were also present. Jiehui immediately saluted the officials and said, "Sir, Student Police Officer 66622 Jiehui reports. Jiehui, you assisted the police in solving the case, and the police should give you a commendation." The principal smiled and said. "Thank you, sir." Jiehui said loudly. "Don't rush to say thank you for now," the principal continued, "you are just a student police officer and not a formal police officer. You are not within the police force and cannot be commended as a police officer. But the student police are also a member of the disciplinary force in Xiangjiang, and you cannot be considered an ordinary citizen. You cannot be awarded the Good Citizen Award, so this commendation can only be conveyed orally. Do you have any objections? It's been a long time, but it's nothing to do." Jiehui rose in his heart and replied. "No opinion, sir." The principal still nodded with a smile and said, "Jiehui, you are still young, and there are still many opportunities to make contributions in the future. Although this time we can only give you verbal praise, your performance this time will also be recorded in the grades. I also hope that you will not be arrogant and complacent, and continue to work hard in your future studies to strive for even better performance. I have great confidence in you for this year's Silver Flute Award and Shui Fu Cup." Jiehui breathed a sigh of relief. Although there were no substantial rewards this time, if he could win the Silver Flute Award and Shui Fu Cup, it would still be very useful in his future promotion. As long as you don't make big mistakes and offend the officer, being promoted to police chief should be smooth sailing. As for being promoted to inspector in the future, it depends on your work performance. Stepping out of the principal's office, he was stopped by a voice. Jiehui, wait a moment." Jiehui turned around and saw that his homeroom teacher, Sheriff Li Wensheng, was calling him. Class teacher Li Wensheng walked up to Jiehui and said, "Jiehui, the results of last week's police regulations exam have been released. Your grades have improved compared to before, but they are not considered excellent, and there are still many typos in your exam paper." Jiehui immediately showed an awkward expression. If he were writing simplified characters, he would definitely have no problem, but when writing traditional characters, there would inevitably be stroke errors. Li Wensheng continued, "You just solved the murder case, which is indeed a bonus point. However, if you want to win the Silver Flute Award and the Shui Fu Cup, you still need to be convincing in terms of grades. If your grades are too poor, even if you give the award, it will be difficult to convince the audience. After all, the police force is a place that follows rules and regulations. If someone or something makes a special exception, some people will also want to use special channels in the future, which is not conducive to the overall situation of the police academy. So the upcoming tests are quite important for you. If you can achieve good results in the tests, then the Silver Flute Award or Shui Fu Cup will be awarded to you in the end, and others will not have any objections. There will be a live fire shooting test the day after tomorrow, and the results of this test will directly affect your final score. Next, there will be 2 days and 1 night of outdoor training, which is also an extremely important comprehensive ability assessment. Please perform well and achieve good results. Don't forget to bookmark it, book enthusiasts. Thank you for passing the level. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Shooting Test. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8 Shooting Test. Police Academy Shooting Range. Student police officers stand in line, waiting to participate in shooting tests. Perhaps due to the need to fire live ammunition, the atmosphere in the shooting range appeared very serious, with a smell of gunpowder emanating from the air. Even the wind blowing from afar carried a hint of killing intent. The firearms used in the shooting test have been placed on the table at the shooting point, with a uniform number of 38 pistols. The full name of the 38 pistol is the Smith Wesson M10 revolver, which is also the most common type of handgun used by the Xinjiang police. The caliber of this gun is 0.38 inches, so it is also known as the 38. Several instructors appeared at the shooting range, led by a person named Chu Mingchang, who was a shooting instructor at the police academy. He used to be a sniper for the Flying Tigers, but due to injury, he was unable to continue the high-intensity work of the Flying Tigers, so he came to the police academy as an instructor. Chu Mingchang saw that the atmosphere at the scene was a bit tense, so he spoke up, "I won't repeat the importance of this live fire test. I think everyone will attach great importance to this test. Also, I'll add a touch of color to this test. Next month, the police force will hold a shooting competition in our school. The top 3 students police officers in today's test scores can get VIP viewing spots for the competition." "Sir, what are the VIP viewing spots?" someone immediately asked. "It's the timekeeper on site and the person closest to the contestants. The participants in the competition are all police sharpshooters, and the timekeeper can observe up close how the sharpshooters shoot, which is a rare opportunity." After Chu Mingchang finished speaking, he took out a form and spoke up, "Each group of 8 people will take the test. Those who have reached their names will come forward to take the test." Qiu Junxian. Class monitor Qiu Junxian was the first to be called, and he immediately took a step forward. Other people whose names were called later also moved forward, while he Jiehui and Yushuali were not called by the first batch of names. The first group of 8 police officers stood at attention in front of the gun stand. According to Chu Sir's instructions, they first put on their earmuffs, then checked the firearms, filled them with bullets, and finally put the guns into the holster at their waist. These standard actions are also part of the assessment. "Prepare." Chu Mingchang deliberately let out a long voice, "Let's start." The 8 people immediately began to move, opened their gun holsters, pulled out their guns, prepared for shooting, aimed at the target 10 meters away, then pulled up the flight, and then aimed again to shoot the next bullet. After firing 6 bullets, removed the bullet casings and placed the gun back in its original position. The first round of 8 people's testing ended, and everyone looked towards the distant gun target. Qiu Juanshuan's 6 shots were really good, all 5 of them hit Zone A. Someone exclaimed. In the previous tests, Qiu Junxian also ranked first, but at most it was only 4 shots in Zone A. This time, there was actually 5 shots in Zone A. "It seems that he is still the first place," said the other person. The gun target used in the shooting training of school police officers is not a circular gun target, but a humanoid gun target. There are no rings on the gun target, but it is divided into 4 areas. The first area is naturally the area outside the humanoid target, equivalent to the off-target area. Within the humanoid region, including the arms, lower abdomen, legs, and other positions, it is called the C-zone. Hitting these areas will not cause fatal damage. The position from the chest to the abdomen of the humanoid target is circled in an oval shape, and the inside position is the B area. This area basically contains the main organs of the human body. Hitting these areas can cause significant damage, but it can still be salvaged. Between the chest and abdomen, approximately the location of the heart and liver, is circled with a small white box, slightly larger than the palm, and this is area A. If hit in this area, it will damage important organs and have a probability of causing direct death. It is worth mentioning that the head of the humanoid target is placed in Zone C, rather than the highest scoring Zone A. The main goal of police shooting training is to make the opponent lose their resistance, and not to encourage a one-shot headshot. So all the police officers practice is hitting their bodies. The core of shooting testing is to test shooting accuracy, so the score for hitting Zone A is the highest. Jiehui also looked at the gun target in the distance, and he felt that Qiu Junshuan's shot was very accurate. Although this test is not a quick shot, the 1.38 bullets hit 5A zones, which is definitely a top score. The training period for Xiangjiang police is only 27 weeks, unlike in mainland China where they have to attend several years of police academy. During the 27-week training period, I fired over 280 bullets in total. Sharpshooters rely on bullets to feed, with only 280 bullets. In addition to learning to aim at the shooter without trembling, they are also at a level that can hit the target. It is impossible to hit accurately with the practice of 280 bullets, unless one has extremely high talent. Qiu Junxian has great shooting talent, he can shoot so accurately. Jiehui sighed. I remember telling you before that Qiu Junxian comes from a police family, and his father, brother, and sister are all police officers. His father Qiu Sir died on duty many years ago, and his brother Qiu Junqing is a senior inspector of Aji. Ali introduced. No wonder there's a family background, Jiehui nodded. Alize continued, Qiu Junxian is a math expert, so his grades have always been very good. Apart from physical fitness, he has also ranked first in all other subjects. I used to think that Qiu Junxian had already booked this year's Silver Flute Award, but I didn't expect you to suddenly come forward and solve a big case. It's estimated that Qiu Junshuan's Silver Flute Award is a bit hanging. My test results are far worse than Qiu Junxian, Jiehui said humbly. The first few tests can only be used as a reference, and the later tests become more important. A good score in the beginning only indicates that you are excellent, but a good score in the end can show your progress to the supervisor. This is also an important bonus point, Ali said. At this point, the first group of 8 people had already left the shooting point and returned to the team. Qiu Junxian instinctively looked at Jiehui, clearly considering him as the biggest competitor for the Silver Flute Award. Chu Mingchang started roll call again, and this time Ali was called by the instructor to participate in the test. In the end, Ali also achieved good results with 4A zone shots, but the aiming time was a bit long. He fired 6 bullets for a full 3 minutes, which means each shot had to be aimed for 30 seconds. Ali, this kid usually looks like a reckless man, and his marksmanship is quite good. Although the aiming time is a bit long, he still has a talent for shooting, Jiehui thought to himself. The second group was completed, and Chu Mingchang began to call the roll again. This time, he finally called out the name of Jiehui. Qiu Junshuan's gaze involuntarily fell on Jiehui, with a hint of tension in his eyes. A friend of Qiu Junxian spoke up to comfort him, Junxian, don't worry, Jiehui just broke the case and showed his face in front of his first brother. In terms of grades, he is far inferior to you. As long as you maintain your current good grades, the Silver Flute Award will definitely be yours. At this point, Jiehui had already arrived at the shooting point, put on his earmuffs as instructed by the instructor, and began checking the firearms. This gun is quite light. Jiehui weighed the .38 in his hand with one hand. As a revolver, the .38 naturally has many drawbacks, such as close shooting range, weak penetration, average shooting accuracy, low firing rate, and slow bullet changing. But this pistol also has many advantages, such as high stability, less likely to get stuck in bullets, and less likely to misfire. Lightweight is also one of the advantages of a .38 pistol. The handle of .38 can be replaced with rubber or plastic material, which greatly reduces the weight of .38, making it easy for women to use. If it's not a revolver, the handle usually needs to be equipped with a magazine, so the handle cannot be replaced with other materials, which naturally cannot reduce the weight of the entire gun. Jiehui checked the 3 or 8 bullets in his hand, loaded them with 6 bullets, and then put the gun into the holster around his waist, waiting for the instructor's command. Prepare, start. Chu Mingchang gave the order, and Jiehui immediately began to move. Raise your gun, aim, and pull up the flight. Pop 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 pop. 6 gunshots rang out in a row. Jiehui shot 6 bullets in just 6 seconds, while others were still aiming and did not fire their first shot. Both the instructor and the police officer looked at Jiehui in surprise, and even the other police officers who were aiming couldn't help but look at Jiehui. Ali Dun looked anxious and muttered, "So fast, you should aim and hit again." Qiu Junxian breathed a sigh of relief, feeling that he must be the first place again. With a recoil of 38, it's impossible for Jiehui to maintain shooting accuracy when shooting so quickly. It would be great if he could hit the target. Everyone who has recommended tickets, please support me. Thank you. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Full-level boss conquers novice village. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Full-level boss conquers novice village. Has Jiehui gone crazy? Why did he shoot so quickly? This is a test, not a daily practice. It needs to be included in the final grade. The rapid firing must have been intentional. What is Jiehui thinking? Do you think your grades are too average and intentionally give up the Silver Flute Award by taking a poor grade? Shooting 6 shots in 6 seconds, although not yet reaching the shooting speed limit of 38, is not far from the maximum shooting speed. More importantly, it is difficult to maintain shooting accuracy by using .38 for quick fire. The kinetic energy of .38 is very small, only over 200 joules, so its power is not as strong as that of a 9mm pistol, but its recoil is not small, larger than most pistols. After all, this is a handgun produced in 1899, and at that time, there was no design for a recoil rod, so how could one consider the issue of recoil? A strong recoil will definitely affect the accuracy of continuous shooting. Unless special training is conducted, using .38 continuous shooting is impossible to maintain high accuracy. Simply put, it means that when shooting in a burst, the gun cannot be held down, and if you want to hit accurately, you can only perform a spot shot. Therefore, during training, the instructor will require the student police to aim before firing, not because the police force is missing those few bullets, but mainly because the 38 combo is really inaccurate. Moreover, there are a total of 6 bullets in Gen 338. After the 6 bullets are fired, changing bullets is also very slow. If you change bullets in the game, your opponent will bring a knife in front of you, and you can be stabbed in person. So .38, cherish every opportunity of a bullet. When Jiehui made a 6-second continuous shot, no one thought he would have a good result. With such recoil, being able to hit the target was very good. Amidst the surprised gazes of the crowd, Jiehui took out the bullet case and then put the pistol back in place. He took a step back and stood at attention, making the gesture of ending the shooting. Jiehui, what are you doing? This is a shooting test. Chu Mingchang's angry roar sounded. Report, sir, I have completed the shooting test, Jiehui said with a straight and round tone. Are you completing the test? Are you firing randomly? Chu Mingchang's last word of gun had not yet been spoken, and his words suddenly stopped. Because at this moment, Chu Mingchang's gaze was fixed on the distant gun target, and then the instructor's face showed an incredible expression. How could that be? Chu Mingchang murmured to himself. I saw 6 bullet holes in the A area, which was slightly larger than a palm, on the distant gun target. It is obvious that all 6 bullets hit the target in Zone A. This is fake. He fired 6 bullets in 6 seconds, all hitting Zone A. He's a student police officer, how could he be so accurate? Chu Mingchang thought to himself. Chu Mingchang has worked as a sniper in the Flying Tigers team and is also a top-ranked sharpshooter in the police force. He naturally knows how difficult it is to hit all 6 bullets in Zone A with a recoil of 38 while firing at high speed. If it were a member of the Flying Tigers team, such a result would not be surprising, and there were also police officers with incredible marksmanship in each division. But as a student police officer, it's incredible to be able to fire so accurately with less than 300 bullets at most. The recoil of .38 will indeed have a significant impact on the accuracy of rapid fire. However, for Jiehui, this amount of recoil is nothing at all. When Jiehui was the commander of the reconnaissance unit, he used the Type 54 pistol for rapid fire training. When it comes to recoil, the Type 54 pistol is no less impressive than the 38, and even larger. The Type 54 pistol was once a standard accessory for the Chinese military and police. This gun has great power, strong penetration, good range, simple structure, and is relatively sturdy, able to adapt to various harsh conditions. Although the Type 54 pistol also has drawbacks such as being prone to jamming and firing, it remained the main melee weapon and was used for more than 50 years until it was slowly replaced by the Type 92 pistol in the 21st century. In Xinjiang, the Type 54 pistol is also known as the Black Star pistol, and many of the so-called provincial and Hong Kong flag soldiers use this type of pistol. When facing the Xinjiang police's .38, the Black Star pistol has an absolute advantage in range, firing rate, and ammunition. The firepower of one Black Star pistol can suppress 3.38 pistols. Especially with John Woo's Black Star pistol, when handed over to Chow Yun-fat, it can basically achieve unlimited bullets and complete the entire gunfight without changing the magazine. The recoil of the Black Star pistol is also very strong. Basically, after firing the first shot, the bullet will float up when firing the second shot. If you use the Black Star pistol for a combo shot, you won't hit the first shot, so don't expect to hit it later. Of course, if specialized shooting training has been conducted and the Black Star pistol is used for continuous shooting, accuracy can still be guaranteed. For example, special police officers of the People's Armed Police use a Black Star pistol to quickly fire at a 10-meter target, not lower than the 9th ring. Jiehui was a reconnaissance platoon commander back then, and his job was in the Special Forces. Training was also the standard for Special Forces. His marksmanship was fed out with piles of bullets, and he could use the Black Star pistol to achieve precise continuous firing. Shooting is a skill, and this kind of skill has always been versatile. Replacing the Black Star pistol with .38 has little effect on Jiehui's hit rate. If Jiehui is more familiar with the performance of .38, he can also accelerate his shooting speed a bit. At this moment, the police officers who were not far away also saw the 6 holes in the A area of the gun target in the distance. Surprisingly, all the gun holes are in Zone A. What's his shooting rate? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I didn't count wrong, did I? All 6 shots were fired at Zone A. How could this be? Even Qiu Junxian just hit the 5-shot up area. The key is that Qiu Junxian has carefully aimed, but Jiehui fired his gun directly and even fired 6 shots in a row without aiming in the middle. How did Jiehui do it? Is he still a human? In the student police queue, Qiu Junshuan's face had turned pale. He opened his mouth slightly and couldn't believe everything he saw. As a member of a police family, Qiu Junxian has naturally seen many skilled marksmen. His father and brother are also considered skilled marksmen, so in terms of shooting, Qiu Junxian is not an outsider. But it was precisely because he was not an outsider that he realized how difficult it was to use .38 for a combo shot, with all 6 shots hitting the target area A. Even though there are police officers practicing guns every day in departments like the Serious Crime Unit, it is not uncommon for them to reach this level. Why has Jiehui's marksmanship improved so much? Is he blind? This idea came to Qiu Junshuan's mind and was immediately rejected by him. If it's just 2 or 3 shots hitting, then we can still explain it as blind, but the probability of all 6 shots hitting is too low, and it definitely cannot be blind. At this moment, the most awkward moment was the shooting instructor Chu Mingchang, who stood on the spot, unsure of what to say. In the shooting course, if any student police officer dares to use a 38 speed shot, Chu Mingchang will 100% be able to hit the head and face with a big shot. However, at this moment, Chu Mingchang really wanted to burst out, but he had no way to speak. What should I spray? Are you shooting indiscriminately without aiming? But all 6 bullets hit Zone A. Are you shooting too fast? The sharpshooter of the police force, who is not a fast shooter. When catching thieves, if the shooting speed is not fast enough, the police will be the ones who die. No instructor would teach police officers to be humble before shooting and let the bandits shoot first. This is not asking the leader to run first. If he didn't spray, there was no reason. If he didn't spray, he would disrespect the authority of the instructor. After holding back for a while, Chu Mingchang finally turned his gaze to the other 7 police officers who were participating in the test. I can't spray Jiehui, can't I spray you? It's a shooting test now. What are you waiting for? Don't aim and shoot quickly. Chu Mingchang said sternly. In an instant, the instructor's authority once again possessed him. Jiehui stood in place, smiling as he watched the others participate in the test. It feels really good to have a full-level boss abusing the novice village. How many people are new readers who have passed the level? If you feel that having too few words is not satisfying, you can take a look at the previous book, Reborn Industrial Tycoon, which has 10,000 badges and should have the quality of the instruction manual. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Team Building Training. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10 Team Building Training. Shooting instructor Chu Mingchang presented the score sheet of the shooting test to Inspector Peng. Inspector Peng is the teaching director of the police academy. Although he does not have any teaching tasks, he is still responsible for frontline teaching activities, so he can only be considered as half of the management team. Inspector Peng picked up the score sheet and didn't immediately open it. Instead, he asked, first place this time, should it be Qiu Junxian? How many A zones did he hit? Qiu Junxian hit 5 A zones, but he was only in second place, Chu Mingchang answered. 5 A districts are just second place. Did the first place hit 6 A districts? Isn't it even with the police academy's record? Inspector Peng exclaimed in surprise. The first place hit 6 A zones, breaking the police academy record, Chu Mingchang said. Surprisingly able to hit 6 A zones, there will be another sharpshooter in the future. Who is so skilled? Inspector Peng opened the score sheet and began checking the grades of the student police officers. At the first moment, Inspector Peng saw the prominent Arabic numeral 6, and the name in front was Jiehui. It's actually Jiehui, he hit 6 A zones. It's really unexpected. Inspector Peng looked surprised. Then he continued, before, I was still worried that Jiehui's grades were relatively mediocre. If he were to break the rules of the police academy by awarding him the silver flute, others would also be dissatisfied. Now it's different. There is a subject that ranks first and even breaks the police academy record. So it's reasonable for us to award him the silver flute award, and then it can be considered as an explanation to our first brother if someone who has been personally praised by the police chief cannot receive an award upon graduation, doesn't it mean that the chief's vision is not very good? Inspector Peng looked back at the number 10s, and his expression froze. He then looked at the music sir seriously and began to scold. You are also an old man from the police academy. Why are you still not taking things seriously? You even wrote the time wrong. This kind of low-level mistake should not happen to you. Inspector Peng spread out the score sheet and pointed to the number 10s behind Jiehui. Sir, this number is not wrong, it is indeed 10 seconds, Chu Mingchang quickly explained. Complete the entire shooting process in 10 seconds and hit 6 A zones. Are you joking? Inspector Peng said. Sir, it's true. As I have seen with my own eyes, it only took 10 seconds for Jiehui to pull out his gun and exit the bullet shell after firing. Chu Mingchang hesitated for 2 seconds and then added, if we use a stopwatch to calculate, it may be less than 10 seconds. The series of actions of drawing a gun and aiming takes about 2 seconds, and it also takes 2 seconds to complete the shooting action after withdrawing the bullet. Including the 6 seconds of shooting, the entire shooting process of Jiehui takes 10 seconds. Is this the performance of the sharpshooter? Inspector Peng frowned and continued, has Jiehui performed exceptionally well in his previous shooting training? No, in the previous shooting test, his score was average, but this time he suddenly became stronger, Chu Mingchang said. Based on your judgment, why did this situation occur? Inspector Peng continued. After thinking for a moment, Chu Mingchang answered, based on my experience, training with 280 bullets is impossible to become a sharpshooter, so this can only be explained by talent. However, Jiehui did not show any performance before and deliberately concealed his strength. Why does he hide his strength? Inspector Peng spoke up. Perhaps Jiehui has an introverted personality and doesn't like to show off, wanting to maintain a low profile. I know many people with social anxiety are like this, Chu Mingchang explained. So, Jiehui is still a hidden expert. Why doesn't he continue to keep a low profile? Inspector Peng said. I think he can't hide it anymore. In the previous restaurant murder case, the killer wanted to frame it for Jiehui, which also forced him to show his abilities. Now Jiehui has become a target of public criticism. If he continues to maintain a low profile, he may be looked down upon by other police officers, Chu Mingchang continued to explain. It makes sense. If you have fame without ability, it's really difficult to win over the crowd. Inspector Peng nodded and said, although the police force emphasizes teamwork, it also encourages healthy competition. I hope they can make progress in the competition. The test of refreshing the Han village with a full-level boss's anger has ended. Jiehui not only won first place, but also broke the record for school police officers participating in shooting tests. With this test, Jiehui successfully established his reputation among the student police. Previously, Jiehui, although not as transparent as a police academy, only existed inconspicuously. The investigation of the restaurant murder case instantly made Jiehui a prominent figure in the police academy, and the director's future detective brought a wave of hatred to Jiehui, greatly increasing the number of student police officers who looked down on him. If Jiehui had performed exceptionally well before, solving the kitchen murder case would at best be icing on the cake. But if the same thing happens to a mediocre student police officer, it becomes jealousy. For example, Li Ka-shing profited billions from land speculation and bought a new private jet. Ordinary people would not feel much when they learned about it, but instead would think that Li Ka-shing had a great investment vision. If your neighbor next door makes a profit of several million from buying a second-hand house and buys a BMW, then you will feel a bit sour in your heart and always think that BMW is so eye-catching. Human nature is like this. There will always be people who feel that as long as you live better than me, I can't bear it. But this is not a bad thing either. The damn desire for victory and comparison have always been the driving force for human hard work and struggle. In this shooting test, the results of Jiehui's 6A zones instantly extinguished the desire for victory and comparison among others. Such results were too exaggerated, causing other police officers to be completely unable to stand up. Seeing those 6 gun holes in Zone A is like an ordinary person seeing Li Ka-shing's private plane, with no waves in their hearts. It's none of my business. On the weekend when the police academy was on vacation, Jiehui returned home and spent a boring weekend. Jiehui's mother comes from a very good family. She also attended a prestigious school since childhood and later went to England to study at a university, which can be considered as a young lady. However, Jiehui's father came from an average family background. He started working after graduating from high school, but due to lack of high education, he became a decoration worker. But Jiehui's father is very handsome, with a knife at the beginning of the word color and a love brain. His mother is greedy for fresh meat, disregarding the differences in their families, and has decided to marry and give birth to Jiehui. A typical wealthy lady who falls in love with a handsome and poor loser. However, love is just a dopamine secreted by the brain, which cannot solve the various bumps in real life. When two people truly live together, various financial and economic issues continue to erupt, and the differences caused by their family backgrounds also make the conflict between them bigger and bigger. In the end, Jiehui's parents chose to divorce. Jiehui's mother was probably worried that it would be difficult to remarry with her child, so she did not fight for Jiehui's custody and paid an additional large amount of custody. It is indeed easier to get married without procrastination. Jiehui's mother remarried and married a psychologist. Later, the two immigrated to Australia and had not returned to Xinjiang for 10 years. And Jiehui's father did not stay either. He took the alimony to develop in mainland China and later opened a factory, gradually expanding his career. He has become a well-known entrepreneur in mainland China. When a man has money, he naturally wants to find a young and beautiful woman, and the same goes for Jiehui's father. He found a stepmother for Jiehui, who gave birth to a pair of twins. In this way, Jiehui's father had even more excuses not to return to Xinjiang, and the family of four lived a comfortable life in the mainland. So Jiehui grew up living with his grandparents, and his impression of his parents, apart from a few photos from over a decade ago, was the monthly living expenses sent in. Later, Jiehui's grandparents also passed away one after another, and Jiehui continued to live in his grandparents' old house. Jiehui's father did a lot of business in mainland China and didn't care about this old house. He simply let Jiehui inherit this property. In the eyes of outsiders, Jiehui is simply a winner in life. His father sends tens of thousands of yuan to him every month, which can make his life worry-free. In addition, he also has his own house. With the housing prices in Xinjiang, this house alone is something that many people will never strive for in their lifetime. A single dog without a father or mother also lives a lonely life. Perhaps for this reason, Jiehui chose to apply to the police force and seek a glimmer of warmth in collective life. In the new week, Jiehui returned to the police academy. This week, the police academy will conduct 2 days and 1 night of wilderness survival training. In the dormitory, the police officers chatted and packed their luggage for outdoor training. Do you want to bring sunscreen? The sun has been quite intense these past few days. We're going into the mountains this time, not to the desert. There are trees on the mountains. There are many mosquitoes in the mountain, so I brought a bottle of mosquito repellent spray, and I will not be afraid of mosquitoes. Do you want to apply to the instructor and bring a few electric batons? In case you encounter a wild beast, you won't be bare-handed. So many of us are afraid of wild beasts. Besides, in the mountains of Xinjiang, what kind of beasts can there be? The difficulty of this field training is higher than before. I heard that wearing a gas stove is no longer allowed. Without a gas stove, how can we start a fire and cook? Is it difficult to pick up firewood? Listening to everyone's discussion, Jiehui couldn't help but burst into a bitter smile. The outdoor survival training for student police officers involves climbing a mountain together, camping on the mountain, taking a nap, and then going down the mountain the next day. During this period, you can bring your own food and drink, such as canned goods, compressed biscuits, etc. You can even carry some snacks if you have strength. In Jiehui's view, this kind of wilderness survival training is more like a company building a team, going outdoors for a picnic and chatting, staying away from the hustle and bustle of the city, breathing fresh air, and it is completely different from the wilderness survival training of special forces. Xinjiang is just such a big place, even if it falls into the wilderness mountainous area, it can still be walked out in a day's effort, so the police in Xinjiang don't need to specifically learn the skills of wilderness survival. Therefore, the purpose of the outdoor survival training of the student police is not to let everyone search for insects like Mr. Bay, nor to practice starving like Brother Da, but to train everyone's teamwork ability. Simply put, this can also be considered a form of team building. This year's wilderness survival training has increased in difficulty compared to previous years, and gas stoves are no longer allowed, but lighters and matches can still be carried. For Jiehui, this is basically no difference. After all, he is a reconnaissance soldier with practical combat experience. Even without a matchstick, he has some ways to start a fire in the wild. However, other police officers couldn't help but complain that a few people who grew up in the city would start a fire. Without a gas stove, these people may not even be able to cook instant noodles. The bus will take the police officers to Huangshe Wharf, which will also be the starting point for wilderness survival training. Now announce the grouping. Jiehui, Yushueli. The instructor repeated several names in a row. You are Group A, Jiehui. As the team leader, you will be responsible for assigning tasks to the team members later. This is the map for this field training, and you need to arrive at the designated location within the specified time. The instructor said and handed a map to Jiehui. In the past, the team leader would not have had the chance to compete with Jiehui, but now Jiehui has become a strong contender for the Silver Flute Award, giving him more opportunities to showcase himself. Jiehui took the map and quickly looked at it. The map only indicated the location, not the route. That is to say, the group leader needs to plan their own route for each group. In this way, the team leader's planning of the walking route will directly affect the speed of reaching the destination, while also testing the team leader's personal ability. Jiehui, let me take a look at the map. Ali leaned over and took the map to carefully examine it. It's just a regular map of the Saigon district, published a few years ago. We're here now, and the endpoint is at this place. How should we go this way? Ali began to stroke on the map. Before the finish line, we need to go to 3 assembly points. The first assembly point is about 4 kilometers away from here and needs to be reached within an hour and a half. Jiehui pointed to the location of the first assembly point on the map. Walking 4 kilometers in an hour and a half is simply too easy, said Ali confidently. Jiehui spoke up and said, at the beginning, of course it was easy, and the road was also very flat. It would be difficult to walk after entering the mountains. Carrying tents, food, and a large bucket of purified water, several members of Group A began to move towards their destination. Ali carried the bucket of pure water and walked at the forefront of the team without any difficulty. His physical fitness score ranks first among all school police officers. The instructor once evaluated that Ali's physical fitness has reached the threshold of the Flying Tigers team. In Jiehui's view, there is no need to carry that large bucket of pure water. Next to it is the Wani Reservoir, so there are plenty of water sources in the mountains. Even if it is not as pure water, it is not a problem to boil and drink. The police academy dispatched 2 instructors to follow behind Group A, who did not provide guidance and were only responsible for recording the performance of the student police officers. The first gathering point is only 4 kilometers away and the terrain is relatively flat. Each group chose the same route, and everyone quickly arrived smoothly. The 2 assembly points behind are both inside the mountain, and the end point is even deeper in the mountains. At this point, the real test begins, and the routes of each group also diverge. Jiehui is responsible for leading the way, walking at the front without looking at the map. He looks relaxed and at ease, as if he is coming for a trip. But in reality, the route had already existed in his mind. Jiehui, did we take the wrong direction? Should we turn left on the path we just took? Someone asked. You didn't make a mistake, so rest assured. Follow me and I guarantee you'll reach the finish line first, Jiehui responded confidently. I've been walking for half a day now, and you don't even look at the map. Even if you make a mistake, you don't know. I really have no confidence in my heart, said the other person. Jiehui took out the map and casually handed it to the other party, while saying, reading a map is a waste of time. If you're willing to read it, just walk and look, don't fall behind. The person took the map and carefully looked at it, trying to confirm their location. Jiehui smiled faintly and thought to himself, are you looking at a map with a reconnaissance platoon leader? Are you having a really bad head? Didn't you enjoy watching it? It's okay. You can take a look at the book Rebirth of an Industrial Tycoon, that has thousands of badges, and the quality will definitely not be too poor. End of this chapter.